Welcome to the Leading Conversations podcast, sponsored by the Excel Leadership Network. On each episode, JD Pairing will have conversations with church planting pastors and leaders from around the country. You can learn more about how to connect with Excel at the end of this podcast. Let's join JD now and listen in on this leading conversation.
It is time for another Excel Leadership Network Leading Conversations podcast. Today, we have a surprise guest from Surprise, Arizona. The great Jonathan Singh is with us. Jonathan, thanks for being here.
Hey, so good to be here. So good to be here.
Hey, why is it called Surprise? Do people walk around with their eyebrows up going, what is this place?
I think they call it Surprise because nobody was supposed to ever live out here. It was really farmland, agriculture, and it's developed into one of the fastest growing cities in Arizona. We have what we call the valley. So the valley sits underneath the mountains. And so you got your East Valley, which is super developed, and ASU is over there, big schools. And then the West Valley was a lot more farmland, agriculture.
What do you grow in that desert? I mean, cactus?
Yes, obviously that. That's a good question, man. I've seen lettuce out here. I've seen corn, believe it or not, things out, cotton. I've seen cotton fields out here. But that's a great question. I need to brush up on what actually grows out here. But I know I've seen a couple of those things happening, but less and less of it at this point now because more homes are going up and more people are moving in. They're growing homes. Yes. Healthy homes. Yes,
West
for
Valley
sure.
Surprise. Yeah. Hey, well, let's just jump into it. Tell us your story, how you came to Christ.
Yeah, would love to. My parents are from a small island in the Caribbean called Trinidad and Tobago. And my dad grew up, Trinidad and Tobago is made up of people who have migrated from Africa and have migrated from India and even China. I mean, it's very international at this point, but back then we had a lot of Indian culture and African culture represented. And so my dad, he grew up actually a Hindu. He grew up in the Hindu faith. And so when he was growing up, he was invited to a church. He was a musician, and his story is he goes to the church and just falls in love with Jesus. He doesn't know who this person is, but he feels compelled, and just decides to give his life to Christ, and leads his entire family, his parents, his siblings, all to Jesus. And so fired up for Jesus, he moves to America. And when he moves to the States, he's kind of serving in a church and just feels called to start and plant a church. I don't even think it was planting a church back then. It was just like, hey, this is what we're going to do. And so it was really, really small, kind of a storefront deal. He was bivocational.
Was this in New York?
This was in New York City. Yeah. So he moves to New York City, Queens, New York. Queens is still probably one of the most diverse cities in America. Sure. And, he decides he's working a regular job to feed his family 9 to 5, but feels called to plant a church. And so growing up, that's how I was. I was in church, pastor's kid. I'm the oldest of 4 siblings, and I came to Christ. My dad, because it was such a transient city and still is, he would take the church to the street corners. It almost, because back then the street corners were always filled with what we call corner boys. It was drug infested, and the corner boys are kind of, doing their transactions. And so he felt called to take back the corners for the Lord. And so he would have these, what we call street meetings. Billy Graham had the Crusades, and they were all on these tents. And I think he kind of took his cues from that. And so he went to the street corners, set up with a band. They sang, and us as kids, we would pass out something called tracts. Tracts back in the day, and we would hand out tracts to people in the streets. And one day he's kind of in his message, and he's winding down his message, and he begins to talk about John 3:16. And for God so loved the world that he gave his only son, and whoever believes in him will not die, but have everlasting life. But I think that day, as he was saying that, I had heard it before, I could just see the passion and the desire for someone to get to know him and know the Lord more. And just at that street corner, man, I gave my heart to the Lord. I was 10 years old, gave my heart to the Lord, and I've been following ever since. Got baptized and started serving in church as a teenager, and just leading worship, opening the church, putting the lights on, vacuuming, whatever PK kids do. That's what we did. And we were just so excited for the Lord. And went to Bible school and went to Southwest Bible College. At the time they were in Georgia. They're now in Houston. But going there, I was part of a crew called Foursquare, denomination called Foursquare, and they were part of this school. And the one of the guys who sat on the board, he had a church in Orlando, Florida, and he invited me to come out to Orlando, Florida, and be a part of his ministry and church. And I was pretty young. Met my wife in high school at the time. She wasn't saved. She was also a Hindu, and gave her heart to the Lord later in her teenage life. And we've got two wonderful kids. We've got a 14-year-old freshman in high school and plays basketball, loves basketball. And we've got a 7-year-old. His name is Liam. He also loves basketball. We're just a basketball family. And
Well, hey,
so we do.
Let me
Go ahead.
Stop you there. You were raised as a preacher's kid.
Yes.
Now you have a couple of preacher's kids. So
yes.
What did you appreciate about your parents, and not to throw them under the bus, but what's like maybe one thing you're not doing?
Yeah. Well, I think part of the struggle that we had growing up was my parents were not from America. And so they were still learning American culture, which meant like we didn't go to ball games. My parents did not spend money on things that they didn't find value in. And so there wasn't a lot of slowing down and enjoying life growing up. Whereas we were kind of going to school, we were born and raised in the States. And so we saw our parents, we saw our friends going to the Garden and going to Knicks games and baseball games. And my parents just didn't enjoy that. I think some of the good things that they instilled in us was to make sure that we loved people well, and always not always put people first, but always know that there's a higher calling and a greater value to your life. And then the other part of that was just we never really slowed down and did things as a family as much as we should have. And I think what we've learned, especially with my wife not growing up in the faith, and having some moments to ask questions with me, like, hey, are we not honoring the Sabbath like the Bible says, and making sure that our kids find value, not only in ministry, but some of the things they love doing. They have passions outside of just ministry, has been sort of exciting for us. So, during basketball season, we make sure that my 14-year-old isn't serving as much in the church, and he's enjoying his life outside of church, and giving him that opportunity. As much as maybe kids probably will resent us for something, we want to reduce that as much as we can and know that we enjoy some of the things they're doing too. So yeah, it's been a learning experience for sure.
Sure. You mentioned going off to Bible college. Talk about your call to ministry. Was it just, hey, this is the family business, I got to do it? Or what prompted you to go into ministry?
Yeah, and so my dad did have a moral failure when I was about 13 years old. And, he had to step away from the church that he had planted, the first one. And, that was a real wrestle moment with the Lord, just trying to figure out why in ministry um, are we going through this, and trying to figure out for me at that point what my identity was in the church. Am I called to really be in this, or am I trying to keep the legacy going? And I really had a great conversation with the Lord. I think part of it is I was about 16 years old. I was at a student event at a camp, and I always kind of just played instruments. I never really led worship or did anything like that. My sister was more of that, and they just didn't have anybody else to do it, man. I'm talking about people were sick. There was no one left. I mean, I was like the last man.
Well, your last name
the
is
bench.
Singh, so they must.
I know, right? I should have.
Okay.
Yeah. And they're like, hey, we need you to step in at this youth camp and just, help us out. I'm like, that is not my gift set. That is not who I am. They're like, listen, we don't have, 3 chords, just play it and sing whatever song you know. But I think in that moment, I realized that that God had a different plan for my life. And even though I felt like I was resenting the church a little bit, God was saying, hey, no, I've got a different plan for you, and you can do it differently. And so I think that was where I began to explore a little bit of what God had for me and what the gift sets were for me. And I do think as a pastor's kid, sometimes you do think you have to do something because you may let your parents down. And it becomes a chore, I think, a little bit, or you're always trying to prove or dispel with someone that you're just a normal kid. And I did go through that season of life for a moment, but it was something I couldn't resist. So, I had an opportunity. Someone gave me an opportunity to go to school for a really, really small amount of money. And I actually do have a 2-year degree in music, but I really felt like I wanted to explore what this could look like in ministry. And the pastor who helped me get through that was on the board and all that good stuff, asked if I would come to Orlando. And I think I had always been a part of my parents' churches. And I did think that they swept some things under the rug that I would do here and there. I think there was some privilege for sure, or entitlement. And I did ask God, what would that look like to go to Orlando and be part of a church that I have never been a part of, and see, not almost prove if this is what God had for me. And I did get there. I kind of sat in the back for the first few weeks and got to learn the church, and kind of took my time, and I just played an instrument. And almost through the last, I think it was about 2 years, all of a sudden I was kind of now a youth pastor at that church. And I was there for about 10 years. My wife and I got married there. We had our first son there. We really loved that place and really just cut our teeth, I think, in ministry and learning what it meant to be a healthy disciple of Christ. And, so I think there's been definitely moments of trying to figure out in this season, hey, what does this need to look like? And what is my purpose really, outside of the skill sets? What do you really want to do? And I think Matthew 28:19, that passage from the jump, when I first heard it believe it or not, as a teenager, was where I really realized that the title in church isn't going to get you your calling. It's really you being a disciple of Christ, that no matter what comes, you're always pushing people forward and always going, hey, this is Jesus, the Lord is asking me to do this, so I'm going to do it, whether it's sweeping, whether it's picking up trash, whether it's singing a song, whether it's just lifting my hands, whatever it is. I just want to be the best and healthy disciple I can be for the Lord, if that makes sense.
Yeah. How did you get to the West Coast, to Los Angeles Laker country? I know you're
Yeah. So I grew up on the back end of Michael Jordan, and I was a Knicks fan, and he crushed my dreams every single time watching him play. So I wasn't a huge fan of Michael Jordan, but Kobe Bryant comes on the scene and just steals the show. And for whatever reason, I just fell in love with Kobe Bryant. So I might have been the only Laker fan on the East Coast at that time. Just over the course of life, you just meet people along the way. And I had some friends that worked for a company called Slingshot, which is a staffing company for the church. and they had a couple of job positions, assignments opened, and I ended up. It wasn't just from New York to or Orlando to LA. Really, we had a stop in Houston, Texas. My in-laws live in Houston, and we were there for a season. And from Houston, we moved to California. But it was just a kind of a spiritual, holy ambition moment of somebody going, "Hey, this could be a great moment for you. What would you think about opportunity?" Of course, I loved California and had this dream of California and what could that look like to be California dreaming. And
And then you get to Victorville, right?
And then I went to Victorville. That had its challenges for sure. And yeah, I remember my wife we flew into Orange County just on the job interview, and she gets into Orange County and she's like, "Oh my goodness, this is incredible. Like this is where God is leading us, And I had found my moment there too. I was looking at the Saddleback Mountains and the ocean, and I just told her, I said, God has different, California's so beauty, and God has different ways of showing his beauty. So we're gonna head on this I-15 real quick, So as we keep heading up, we pass the San Bernardino Mountains, we go into the Cajon Pass, and things start changing. And she for sure, I could see her posture sort of shift, she's like, yeah, I don't know. But I will tell you what, Dan, we fell in love with that church out there. God really called us to do some things. And it brought me back to that street corner moment, I think, really realizing that Victorville was a city in need of hearing the Lord. And High Desert Church was such an incredible church, man. Like, we learned so much. We've taken so many.
Shout out to High Desert Church. There we go.
Shout out to High Desert Church, Tom Mercer, Jack Hampton, all the OGs. They have just been such an incredible influence. George Beardsley, Todd Arnett. I mean, I can go down the list of humble servant leaders who really taught us what it meant to not have a hierarchy in church, not to lead from humility. And we learned so much there. And I think that was the compelling piece of going there, like just realizing that he just does big things. And so we had an amazing time there.
Well, I think we said enough there that they owe us a lunch. So that's
but yeah, exactly.
Talk about, you're kind of a worship pastor doing that sort of stuff. I mean, that's a large church. You're kind of at the top of the heap there. And then where did the church planting bug come from?
Yeah, I think that I've always had that in me. Before I jumped into ministry full time, I worked for the YMCA, and I worked in their sort of nonprofit division, and we built after schools.
Is that one of the songs you used to put in your sets?
Well, I always did. If I could, I would. And
I had a church that met in the YMCA for many years. So we never did that song. So good stuff.
And I would tell you this, that I think working there and seeing, we did after school programs for kids who their parents were working 14, 15 hours and couldn't afford, childcare, things like that. I think that I always had a passion for people, like loving on them and realizing that, man, the church is a safe haven for so many people. I remember one day sitting in the YMCA, I'm about 20 years old, and God just shared a vision with me that one day this would be where his people would be. And I think my dream, I can't remember the church's name, but we did a discovery center there in Oregon, in Portland.
Yes, that's at Willamette Christian Church.
Willamette Christian Church. And I went in there, and that exactly was the vision I had that God gave me, was to have a multi-use, multi-purpose space where the church can be used 7 days a week, where Sunday we have services and worship services, but, there's life community happening throughout the week. And I was about 20 years old when that happened. And I think at 20, you're not thinking about doing any of that. At that time, I'm like, that seems like a lot of hard work, and I'm not in it for that. But God just started leaking that out again in my life, and just putting that back on the front burner. And one day I was driving on the I-10 a few years ago, 2019, and my wife and I are we just had a dinner date. Things are going well. And as I'm driving on the highway, God just deposited that vision again to me. And he was like, this is your time. This is the city that you're going to do it in. And I want you to build a community, build something for my people. And I remember looking over at my wife and going, man, we had such a good night. I do not want to share this moment with her, because she won't see it the way that Jesus is putting it in my heart. And I remember just even having the conversation as I'm driving home, like, Lord, I'm going to need like $1 million if this is what you want to do. Like, I'm just going to need this, this, and this. And he's like, the only thing you need is me. The only thing you need is me. Would you trust in me? And I think part of it was DNA. Like, I grew up watching my parents build something. And I thought that maybe part of that would be a legacy piece, in all of this, to watch the Lord really take something from nothing and make it into something, and really just prove who he is, not only to me, but to the people around us. And he really has been doing that, man. So I don't know. I think it was the right time, and we have not looked back, but for sure we've seen some miraculous things happen, for sure.
Well, we're excited about what you're doing there at Tribe City, right?
Yes, Tribe City Church.
In beautiful Surprise, or what's the other town?
Yeah, we're currently in Waddell, the city of Waddell, which is right outside of the city of Surprise. The school we're in is address Surprise, because Surprise is the larger incorporated city. So, but we see what we call the West Valley. So we actually see people coming in from Phoenix, from Tolleson, which is almost 45 minutes away. We've got 2 families that drive to us, Phoenix, Glendale, Buckeye, Goodyear, and it's been incredible to see almost over 50% of our people come from 25 minutes or more, which is not normal in this suburb town. You drive 10 minutes or less to get anywhere, right? So that's been really, really cool to see that happening.
Well, we're really glad that you're there and you've launched and you're doing that. Hey, let's end with this. We like to give people on the podcast a chance to give us one leadership tip. What would you say to leaders out there who are listening to this? What's a tip you have for us?
Yeah, great question. I would say this: keep digging wells. Keep digging wells. We see in Scripture, Isaac is, he's opening the wells of his fathers, and he's just building a legacy. And there are going to be so many things that come. There are going to be people that come against you. There are going to be questions that are asked. They're going to look at things and go, man, like, you shouldn't be doing it this way, and you should do it this way. Or hurdles from, we're in setup and tear down. So there's things that we deal with the school. And I would say this, man, just keep doing what God has called you to do, because God has ordained your steps. He's blessed you, and he will create a path for you. Just keep digging wells, because the person behind you, they will benefit from your hard work.
Well, that's great. That's a really amazing tip. I didn't tell you I was going to ask that question, and boom.
Yeah, I didn't, but it was just on. It was on there. So
I need to hear that today. So I'm going to get my shovel out and go dig another well. So it's been raining like crazy here in Northern California, but just like the days of Noah, it rained and rained. California was still in a drought. So,
come on, California's been raining a lot too, man. It's been interesting.
Hey, thank you so much for being on. Thanks for what you're doing. We look forward to seeing that. And make sure you get at least one lunch out of the high desert guys.
I will make sure that they take me to lunch. Yeah, it's gonna happen.
And keep being one of the corner boys too. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining the Leading Conversations podcast. We hope that you found it both helpful and encouraging. At Excel Leadership Network, our focus is on the church planter rather than the church. If you'd like to find out more about us, visit our webpage at excelnetwork.org. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. See you next time with another Leading Conversation.